Hey, and welcome back to another episode of VGX on the Hunt Roadshow. And yesterday, I just went over to the closest town that we have, and that is Fergus Falls, Minnesota, which is probably 10,000 people, not very big at all. Um, but I always do there, run errands kind of there, and a couple places I always go. We used to have a pawn shop there last year that actually closed, but a new one moved in recently, so we took a stop for the very first time. That's always awesome. Best feeling in the world to come to a new pawn shop and to see, is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? Um, and this one I would say is pretty good. They had a lot of new stuff, a lot of retro games too. Their new stuff was a little bit pricey, which I don't blame them. I mean, they probably pay a little bit for the newer stuff, and it's hard to keep up with prices on PS3 and those type of games because they fall so dramatically after launch. You know, you buy a game, brand new game, a week after it comes out, you might try and get $40 out of it, but a month in, it could be down to $30 or $20. So I stayed away from anything that was on a disc or anything like that. So I was looking through their old retro games, which they did have quite a few. Not the biggest selection I've ever seen, but they did have a lot of mainstays, the Marios and the Zeldas and stuff like that, which was all eBay prices. Come to expect that. We did end up buying like Tetris, Dr. Mario, Mario Kart for Super Nintendo for basically online value, just because we need them on the site. We sell those quite a bit, and people want those, so we have to restock them, even if, just to have them on the site. But we did go through the NES games and found some that are flying under the radar for most people, like pawn shops and that retail stores. I've noticed that these fly under the radar, yet with the help of a lot of online YouTube reviewers pushing agendas on how good these games are and how hidden and overlooked they are, the prices have started to rise. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Just because they're good games, for one. But they're getting toward the end where everybody has all the mainstays of the original Nintendo, and they want to find some good games. So they come across like Shatterhand for $9 is a really good price on that, because 2 years ago $9 would have been too expensive for us. But words got out on this game, and it's risen. It used to be, at one point it was going for like $30, and that's a little bit much, but $9 is a good price on that now. And then we found Batman Return of the Joker, which from what I've heard, this game kind of has a false demand for it, because it's the people that are buying it, half the time they're not buying it for the game itself. The chip inside of it is one of the harder to find games that are compatible for making reproduction games. I don't know if they're flashing the whole chip to something else, but that's probably part of the reason it's going up, and who knows, really. And the last NES game that we picked up was Power Blade for $8, and I really wish there was like a number 2 right there. That would have been really nice. But nonetheless, $8 for the first Power Blade is still really good. I'm not sure if, like the second one, the prices just went through the roof there on the second one. That's a late release game, and probably a lot harder than this, but those late release title games they're all through the roof. So I don't know if this is just a case of that, where Power Blade 2, just everybody's like, oh, that's one of the big ones. You got to get the Power Blade 2, and now everybody's like, oh, let's get Power Blade. I'm not sure if it's really because it's that great a game, or if it's just the name that is really drawing that price. So I brought those up to the counter, bought them, and he says, "Oh, you retro gamer?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I got everything, you know." So he whipped out this whole box full of boxed Super Nintendo games, And I'm like, my eyes lit up. I'm like, wow, you just don't see this anymore. Even game stores that you go to, most of that stuff is picked over to the point where it's just like Madden games or whatever, just random sports games that are basically nothing. Which he had a few of them there too, but the Link to the Past and Zombies Ate My Neighbors and a whole bunch of other stuff that you don't find in the box anymore. He knew what he had on those. The price was pretty much right where you should be paying for that stuff. But some games, again, were under his radar. Some of them, I think he was just pricing for the cartridge price, because we picked up Real Monsters for $5 and Porky Pig's Haunted Nightmare for $5, which both of them are, they're basically $5 for the cartridge if you're lucky, but just because they're boxed, we picked them up, just because $5 for a boxed Super Nintendo game, if it's not sports, you might as well pick it up. And lastly, at the pawn shop, in the same box, could not believe it, Skyblazin for $9. Complete in the box. It is missing the tray, but that's no big deal. But the really nice box, great game. Again, this is like one of those other games that is really rising in value, because I think it's getting featured on more and more YouTube channels, because it is a really good game. The action in it itself is really good. I know it's made by Sony, and I wonder if they could make a sequel to it on like PlayStation 3 or something like that. That would be awesome. Just like a downloadable HD or something or other, or maybe just kind of like a pseudo remake of some sort. I think that would be totally awesome, because Skyblazin is a really fun game for the Super Nintendo. It kind of mixes it up on different Mode 7 levels, but he kind of zooms in and out. The platforming is kind of creative. It's really fun. If you don't have it, you should have bought it maybe 2 years ago, because the prices were basically $9 for a cart. Nowadays, you're looking at $30 for just the cartridge only. $25, $30 probably. So who knows what this is worth. I haven't looked it up, haven't seen, but I know it's worth more than $9. So that was, I thought that would probably be the best find of the day. And I was really happy, and I was really psyched, because a new pawn shop and you find something like that and it's right down the road. Boy, that makes you feel good. But usually what it made me feel really good is because the local Goodwill that I always go to, the thrift store there, garbage every single time I go there. But it is a compulsive thing with game hunters like us, where you can't go by a thrift store and not go into it, because you're always going to have that in the back of your mind, that you missed the big one. There was something in there, and you missed it. So you always have to check. I got to go in there, got to see what they have. You know what I mean? If you're watching this and you game hunt, you have the same thing as I do. So I always go into the local Goodwill. It's the tiniest, crappiest little Goodwill probably I've ever been into. But it's the only one that's close by here, and I check it often, and I've never done well in there as far as game stuff goes. I do find board games and some other stuff there. But I think the best I've ever done there is maybe a Sega Genesis, console only for $7 or something like that. And that was it. That's like the only game thing I've ever bought in there. But I go there probably twice a month. And you start to lose faith. You really do. You think, oh, that's just not one. They just, nothing in there. But if you persist, and you keep going, you're going to find something. And today proved that. Went over to the media section way in the back, because that's where I would assume that they would put games. And they had a bunch of sealed PC games, which look like the ones that you just buy from the cheap rack that are bundled up on a CD or whatever like that nowadays. But I don't know if these came from Target, because I know Target does a lot of stuff with Goodwill, where if it goes through clearance and doesn't sell, they just dump it off at Goodwill. But these were, or maybe Target was just getting rid of some PC games in their section there. Found Age of Empires 2, the Gold Edition, These are all sealed for $2. Age of Mythology, which is probably one of my favorite strategy games from back in the day. Between this and Civilization 3, I probably spent almost like it seems like a lifetime on these two games. Unfortunately, I don't have that time anymore. I would love to get back in and play the HD version of Age of Mythology. My nephew's been playing it a lot. I just can't commit any time to it. And also another good real-time strategy game is Rise of Nations. If you haven't played that one and you like the Age of series, I highly recommend the Rise of Nations. It's also very good, but these are also all very old too. So that's maybe some of the reason that, I mean, some of these, the highest it goes up, it says Windows 95, 98, and ME. Like, I would be surprised actually if that was still being sold in Target when it has that on the back. But nonetheless, $2 a piece. I'm probably never going to open them. I'm just going to keep them there just to be like, oh, those are some of my favorite games, and here they are, sealed. I wish I had the bigger box versions, but these work too. For $2, you can't complain with that. And then another bigger, older gentleman started crowding the plate on the media section, where he's reaching over in my section and looking at what I'm looking at, kind of reaching across my body. And you know, I think that's kind of rude myself. I don't do that for other people. Maybe if there was something that I really wanted, I might do that. But this guy was just browsing. So I just kind of left. I kind of did a loop around the store. I didn't really want to, I didn't want to be in his way, really. That's kind of Minnesota nice, I should say. And I picked up a couple other things there. TMNT vintage puzzle. Don't know why I bought it for 49 cents, but why not? I like the picture on it. You can tell it's the original from way back when. So, thought that was kind of neat. For 50 cents, I might as well pick it up. So I looped back the store, got that, went back to the media after that guy was kind of done rooting around in there. And he kind of flipped everything over, and it was kind of a pain to look through again. But I don't know if I missed these the first time, or if somebody brought some stuff out while I was kind of looking around at other stuff. But I happened to come across Rugby 06, sealed for the PS2. The couple cuts in the wrap. But again, $2 on that is not a bad deal. This is probably a $10 game if you can find somebody to even want it. Rugby games are weird because the prices on them usually stay high because the supply and the demand are kind of at odds, because the only real way for somebody who wants to get a rugby game is either buy it brand new from somewhere, or you have to buy it used, and most likely online, because most game stores and stuff, I rarely run across rugby games, and this one on the Xbox is especially collectible because I think it's the lowest print run of any original Xbox game. So that's why there's a claim to fame on Rugby 06 on the Xbox. There's kind of more of a collectible market on this. PS2, I think Rugby went all the way up to 08 was the last one. The 08 one still goes for a decent amount of money. Just because Rugby is not as popular in the US. So I don't know if it's a lot of US people or if it's other people around the world that probably might still have a PS2 and want to play rugby because it's more popular there. I don't know. But even like rugby games on the Xbox 360, there's a couple of them, they go for a decent amount too. It's just kind of a weird thing where you don't know a lot of people that want a rugby game, but there's also not a lot of rugby games out there. So you kind of do the legwork on supplying that demand, and you're kind of rewarded when you find them. But anyway, for that, for $2, I figured I'd pick it up and just have it there. And then I saw something that made me pinch myself and be like, are you kidding me? This cannot be in here. And that is Joshua, the Battle of Jericho on the NES. And if you don't know what this is, these are made by a company called Wisdom Tree, which were basically Christian games, trying to put Christian values into video games back in the early 90s, maybe late 80s. And what they didn't want to pay Nintendo's licensing fee and make an actual cartridge through Nintendo, which, that's a pretty Christian thing to do, I guess, is to scam Nintendo out of their money. But, yeah, they just made their own cartridge, made it work on the Nintendo, kind of reverse engineered it, like a lot of other companies like Atari did with Tengen. But, yeah, these are collectible because they were outside of that distribution channel of the regular Nintendo games. So I don't know where you actually got these, if you had to special order them, or maybe select stores gave them away. Maybe even churches were, giving them away or whatever. But you don't find them in this condition. I find Joshua cartridge every once in a while. Bible Adventures is pretty common. But to find this complete in the box like this, there's hardly anywhere on the box. And it's complete. Got everything in it. Even like the original sleeve for the cartridge, which is just a cardboard one. It's not the black one, the official black one that Nintendo has, because it's not an official Nintendo game. So, for $2, could not believe that this was in here. Out of all games, like I could imagine a whole bunch of other Nintendo games being in there, even complete in the box. But this one is just so weird to find. So I was really happy to pick that up. $2. I think this is probably like a $60 to $70 game in this condition. Could not believe it. But that's why it pays off to always go. Always go. Even no matter what you think about your local thrift store, you never know what you're going to find in there. And this is probably the best I've ever done in any Goodwill or any thrift store. And here it is my local one, the closest one nearby me that I've never done well in before. So that's why it pays to always look. But yeah, that did it. Those two places I stopped at did very well at both of them. Couldn't be happier. A lot of times I leave that town and not too happy about what I find. But today makes up for those days and more. So hopefully we get back out on the road on a longer trip. We should be coming up on that pretty soon. Maybe try to be out there this weekend, I think. Maybe South Dakota. So stay tuned for that. Until next time, see ya.